Good afternoon. This is Michael Huang. I'm a member of Veterans for Peace. I serve on the National Board of Veterans for Peace, and I'm also the co-chair, along with Michael Kramer, of the Veterans for Peace China Working Group, which is a special focus group that focuses on U.S.-China relations. I'm here today with Fred Teng, whom I'm very honored to have as a guest. He has a long list of accomplishments, too many for me to name here, but I'll just rattle off a few. He's the president of the America-China Public Affairs Institute. He's the U.S. representative of the China-United States Exchange Foundation. He's a visiting professor at Sichuan University, and he's the general manager of Sino Television. And my favorite credential that he has is that he's the CEO of NewsChina magazine, which I subscribe to and is one of my favorite magazines, actually. So I'm very happy to be able to interview him here on this
Thank you.
program.
Thank you very much. Actually, the News China magazine and Sino Television, it was my previous jobs. I'm no longer in those positions. I'll be happy to talk about why I do some of these things. And I feel very happy to be able to serve in those roles in the past.
Okay, great. And let me just mention one other thing. He's also a board member of USA Badminton, which governs badminton in the United States. But Fred, let me ask you this first question. Right now, things are very tense in relations between the United States and China. What do you think is the foundation of it? What do you think it is that drives this fear that the United States has of China and the tension between the two countries right now?
I think really there's two parts. I think the fear is the government trying to create for the people, and the media support that tactics. What happened is that I think certainly China is competing, and they do not like it that China is competing. And not that China is stronger than the United States. China by far is not. But they're thinking they'll become very close, and one day they will not listen to them of whatever they want to tell them to do. And I think that's where it is. And so a lot of the fear is uncalled for. It's really, there's no basis for these fear, but it's there.
Yes, I know, the United States, you hear some of our top diplomats and geostrategists talk about the zero-sum game, which is a theory out of Western history and thinking where, throughout medieval times and through colonial times, the various Western powers fought each other in order to try to dominate each other as well as dominate the world during colonial times. They went around the world chopping up countries like India and China and countries in Africa and the Middle East into colonies. And then, their theory was that either you are the conqueror or you are the victim, and there's no other possibilities. But that's very different from China's history. We don't believe in the zero-sum game. Chinese in general don't like war and don't feel that dominating the world is necessary. China, almost 1,000 years ago invented gunpowder before anybody else, and China had a monopoly on gunpowder for about 400 years, and yet China never went out and tried to conquer the world. Can you talk a little bit about how China sees the world and what the Chinese view of the world is?
I think first, the zero-sum game. In the last couple of decades, by working with China, trading with China, and the whole world working with each other, we already proved the economy has grown so many times over. There's not a zero-sum game. It is a growing game. It's about dividing up the pie. In terms of China, I think that the Western powers, the United States, UK, France, Germany, Belgium, Spain, Italy, they have a way of a business model which is war profiteering. One of them. What they do is they make very good weapons. They can all make money during a war. Even when they have civil wars, millionaires will be born out of it. But China is not very good at war. China's business model, which many people do not understand these days, and it's a unique one, is peace profiteering. So right now, anywhere in the world, when there's peace, China and that country both make money. They grow the economy, the people's life improved. But wherever there's a war, China lose all its investments. If they have any internal turmoil, China's also in trouble. So China's always pushing for peace. As you can see right now, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, between Israel and the Palestinians in Gaza, and even the most recent one between India and Pakistan. China's position is very, very clear. They only have one position, whether you're a friend or foe. They say ceasefire, stop fighting, and then you can discuss it. And they're going to be very consistent. You will see the next couple of conflicts in the world, they will have the same one. They will tell you, please stop fighting and please work it out. We don't have to be the arbitrator of how you guys work it out, but we urge you to stop fighting.
Yes, that's actually a very classic view. I remember even as a child growing up in San Francisco in the 1950s. You know, I was always taught that uh, Chinese don't like fighting. They will fight hard and successfully when pushed into a corner. But if they're not pushed into a corner, they're not going to go around looking for fights. In ancient times, soldiers were at the bottom of the social ladder. It wasn't like, it was scholars and nobles on top, and then farmers, and then merchants, and then soldiers at the bottom. Uh, it's just not part of Chinese culture to make uh, war the first priority. Um, China's had, like you said, enough land to govern. They don't need more land. Um, in ancient times, they traded through the Silk Roads. That's how they became, successful on a international scale. And the Belt and Road is basically the new Silk Road.
I mean, China actually, they are not a saint. They are not sage. They learned this from history, because in China's history, the country at sometimes was very divided. We know about the Three Kingdoms. We know about the spring, autumn, and warring period. Country is very divided, and people were slaughtering each other. I mean, the Art of War by Sun Tzu and all of these things, they've done so many thousands of years of fighting. They think it's time to stop fighting. And they think war is a very primitive way to resolve conflicts. At the end, it was always a political solution. All wars at the end is a negotiation by political means and settle everything. So this is the way right now they think it's a better model for them, a better model for anyone they work with. Instead of using weapons against each other, is to work with each other and build a better quality of life. You talk about the Belt and Road Initiative. Out of the United Nations 193 countries, 140 of them sign up for this. The original plan was really to help some of the inland countries, the landlocked countries. Those countries does not have a port. They're very, very poor. So they start building these railroads and helping them so that they can trade goods, because you need roads, you need infrastructure. Basically, it's an infrastructure project. But many countries see the benefit of it. They're building, and China become a builder. They're very, very good at building. Right now, they can bore holes in mountains, tunnels, uh, doing very well. They're the top ones. They're still building one airport per week
Wow.
in China. So people say, what do you mean by one airport? I said, well, what it means is on the average, they build about 50 airports a year. So when you average that out, it's like one new airport per week. All of their major places have multiple airports, whether it's in Beijing or Shanghai, and they're building more. And because transportation is important, besides, I used to complain to China when I go back. Wow, your education, your health, it's, your capacity is not there. You need to do more. They tell me, they said, Mr. Teng, we have a plan. What we want to do is first build the infrastructure. We cannot just build a school in the middle of nowhere. Now, how the kids is going to go to their school? So we want to build road. We want to have electricity. We want to have water, and we want to have communication, such as internet, into these places. Then hospitals, schools will follow, because then those structures will be meaningful for them to do that. So it's in Indonesia, China helped them to build a high-speed rail, and the president of Indonesia is so happy. A friend of mine told me every time a foreign dignitary visits Indonesia, he takes them on to the high-speed road. He came to the world. He is the second country, Indonesia, that have such high-speed railroad. And China is also helping Egypt to build a new capital outside of Cairo. So they're doing that. They're building a lot of things which is always good. They just building things, and they're very good at building things right now because they keep on building and they have a lot of experience in building. So that's really you. There are many projects that it's not about how much profit. And people always say, "Wow, these are money losing things." Well, infrastructure is not supposed to make money. It's supposed to benefit the people. It can also help the economy. Building a highway, the highway does not make money, but the highway function as a money maker for small businesses, for all the people. So that's what it's people do not understand this whole infrastructure, because if we are compartmentalized, only think, oh, this project you have to make money, this project. No, China has this holistic way of doing it. So that's why they're very successful doing it.
Yeah, that really strikes me because I remember on my first visit to China, you know, we traveled on high-speed trains that uh, go so fast. I remember one time I wanted to take a picture of a mountain that was coming up in view, and in the time that it took me to pull my smartphone out of my pocket, open it, and get the camera up, we had already passed the mountain. And in California, we've been trying for over a decade to build a high-speed rail just from San Francisco to Los Angeles, and we have failed. You know, now you've traveled a lot and
Yeah,
you've done business and worked a lot in uh, all over China and Taiwan and Hong Kong. Tell me a little about your experiences and your impressions of these different places and how people work there and how they relate to each other.
sure. I think certainly China is the big mass of land, the mainland. Hong Kong, when I was there, when I was very young, I went to Hong Kong when I was 5 years old. It was a British colony. So a lot of the people think that China took Hong Kong. No, it was returning because the British were selling opiums to China. And China has a government official basically banned all of these opium. He burned the opium. And as a result, the British invaded China and they
This is
won.
during the colonial times.
Yeah, and then in the 1800s. And that's why China has to be, they asked for Hong Kong to be ceded and the Kowloon, which is part of it, to be a lease basis on 99 years. And Deng Xiaoping, when talked to Margaret Thatcher, said that has to be returned to us. And And in 1997, that was returned. Hong Kong is different because it went through a colonial time. It has certain influence. It has certain cultures, but it's nice. You, I think people should visit. But even in China, all the cities have different characteristics. Hong Kong certainly, because of the British colony, a lot more people speak English. A lot of people. But today's China, there are more people speaking English in China than the entire United States, just because of the sheer population size. So if they have 300 million people, which is a quarter of their population speaks English, that's the same size as the United States. So if you can think about it, China eventually could have a lot more people who speak English than the United States.
I remember when I visited Hong Kong, when we needed directions, I could go up to a police officer and ask for directions in English, and he
Right,
could tell me.
right. In
Uh,
today, today it's even more amazing because of AI. There are apps. I know even my American friends who are not very sophisticated in technology, they have an app called Google Translate or many of them, Microsoft, they all have them, and China has their own. That basically they can put the phone up, that person will speak in Chinese, he will see the English translation, and he will speak English, and that person can see the Chinese translation. And he can talk to a policeman on the street. I've been in China for meetings in a conference room, but there are a couple of people who can speak maybe 70% Chinese, but there some of them are their first language is Spanish or English or different languages. And all of them are just take out their phone and put on their earpiece, listening to the translation, watching the words. I was just at a Zoom call recently that we see on the side, it's all the faces. And then the share screen is the translation from English to Chinese because we have Chinese speakers and English speakers, no translation needed. Everything is just right there. Very, very convenient.
well, that's amazing. First of all, where are you from originally? And can you tell us a little about your background and how you came to,
Sure.
where you are now?
I was born in Shanghai, which is also a pretty big city in China. It's very much like a New York. It's not the capital of the country, but it's a financial centers and business centers and so forth. When I was 5, my family left China and went to Hong Kong. Why? Because certainly China was not in a very good economic position, and it's just not we have a we my parents just want to have a better life for my brother and I. We moved to Hong Kong, so I was in Hong Kong for 10 years. So I attended uh, from kindergarten to about 8th grade in Hong Kong. Then we came to the United States. At that time, there was a preference called fifth preference, which is the brothers and sisters reunion. So my aunt, they were living in Indiana, and they sponsored us, and we came. We first lived in Los Angeles for 2.5 years. Uh, I went to a junior high school and a high school in LA. Then we came to New York because my father thought it's a better business opportunity for him. He For that trip, we drove across the United States in, in a secondhand Buick full of stuff because we're moving. So the shocks are totally, the springs are totally compressed. And we drove across and we went through so many problems with the car. First, when we went through Arizona, it was overheated. then our tire blew at some point, and it's like like a Chevy Chase movie, But we made it to New York, and it's and I've been in New York uh, ever since. Starting in the mid 80s, I start to travel to China from time to time. Certainly, there are times that China was in chaos, such as in 1989, the June 4th. And I went there in July with a group of people. For me, I always want to know, find out what's really going on. And and the best way is to talking to the people right there and watch for my own eyes to see what's going on. So these trips and other trips, it gives me I become an observer of what's going on in China. I also ran for office in the United States. In 1991 I ran for city council. I lost, but I learned a lot in terms of the campaign. I think I enjoy more about the campaign than will be holding the job. So I'm glad I didn't win. I also was appointed by presidents, mayors, governors in different commissions. As a volunteer, non-paid, but I feel it's an honor to serve. And again, thank you for your service. I I feel that as a citizen, but now I think that because of my knowledge of both U.S. and China, I want them to really get to know each other better. And I want them to open with open eyes and open mind to look at each other. I think the United States can learn from China and China can learn from the United States. Nobody is perfect, but if we can learn the best practices of each other, maybe we can help improve the people's life a little better.
Yes, one of the things that really struck me when I visited China was a couple of things. One was when we were in Shanghai and we were visiting the Bund, I'm looking at these ships coming up river and I'm realizing, there's like several ships coming up like every 10 minutes, and in San Francisco, you might see one ship come through the bay under the Golden Gate Bridge, maybe, every half an hour, every 15 minutes, maybe. And I remember at the time, there was Obama's pivot to Asia, and they were talking about containing China. And I remember thinking to myself, they can't contain this. You know, uh, China's too big. There's too much business going on. That was one impression. The other impression is, in San Francisco, as well as a lot of big cities in the United States, you have thousands of homeless on the street, living in rags, dirty, mentally ill, addicted to drugs, exhibiting really bizarre behaviors on the street. You don't see that in China. I've been to a whole bunch of cities, like more than a half dozen cities in China. I've been out to the rural areas. I've been out to one street villages. You don't see thousands of homeless people. And the other thing in China is you can walk the streets at night, you feel safe, and I remember back during the APEC conference when Xi Jinping came and visited San Francisco, uh, there was a news crew from China from CGTN that came by and they interviewed some of us Chinese Americans about our impressions of all this. One of the things that struck me is that these news people, there were three of them, two men and one woman, on this news team. One was a cameraman, one was a reporter, one was a tech person. They were terrified to walk around the streets of America because they would see all these homeless people, they would see all this bizarre, threatening behavior. They were just utterly terrified. There was nothing like that in China for them to compare themselves to. And you hear the US media talking about Chinese propaganda, and that all these reporters and so on from China are just making propaganda. And I thought to myself, if they're making propaganda, what this shows is that the reality of the United States is actually worse than even the worst propaganda that they can come up in their with in their imagination, you know. Um, so I don't know if you've seen some of the same kind of things.
That's why I feel it's always best to for people to visit China. And these days, go to China. It's not that expensive. It's very doable still, and it nothing beats. If we tell them what's going on, like you said, they think it's a propaganda. But there's no fake facade wall or paintings just to cover things up. There's nothing. You first let me talk about in China. Yeah, there's very few homeless people because one is a a tradition because family members take care of each other. If any children abandon their parents, they'll be shamed by their friends and the society. How dare you? There's cases, of course. So people tend to take care of each other. Secondly, is they also have next time when we go to Shanghai, maybe community food centers at very, very low price. I would say almost like these Chinese food dishes. I go in, try it. Anyone can go it. It's like $1 a dish. So you order 3 dishes, $3, and then they give you all the unlimited white rice you want. It's very good food. So very, very affordable. Right now, I was comparing the price, like some of the things I want to buy in the United States, made in China. Something I saw, it was $180 US. When I went to China, it's $180 renminbi. Now, renminbi is 7.2 to 1. So they're 7 times cheaper. Many of the times we spend a value, it's 1/7 of what we pay here. I pay $27 for taxi, and I pay $27 US dollars for taxi. One of the things is also China is going digital. In a way, they have an app called WeChat. It's very, very powerful. Basically, you want to text each other. That's one of the things people do. You want to send a video, you can do that. You can do a video conference talking to each other or multiple parties. You can share all your pictures and videos like Facebook and share with your friends. But you can also send money and collect money. So if you I buy something for you, or pay me $100, boom, the app just go there. And then you can also order your taxis and so forth. But the one of the things amazing I was telling my American friends is that even if there's a beggar on the street, they hold up a QR code because there's no cash. They hold up a QR code, and if you want to give them money, you just scan their QR code and give them some money. So even they're homeless, it's very digital savvy right now. And basically, I think that President Xi Jinping, since 2018, they went through a alleviation of extreme poverty. Not that there's no poor people, but the extreme poverty. 300 million people was lifted out of there. I would say that today in China, nobody will starve to death. I think that there's still issues about housings and things like that. But people's lives are being improved more and more. And some of the politicians in the United States think that Chinese people will have an uprising against their own government. I think they have it totally wrong because in the last 4,000 years of history of China, the Chinese people are living the best time of their life in the 4,000 years. In the past was not so good. There's not much of a people's quality of life or equality of transportations, of education, your longevity in terms of and and people are being improved. And that is still a lot more work to do, but it's just keep on improving. Every generation can say they're living better than the last generation. So I think that's pretty good.
Yeah. Let me ask you, let's see, we've been going for about 45 minutes. Let me just ask you one last question. There's a lot of tension around Taiwan right now. The United States is increasing our armaments there. Donald Trump is demanding that they up their military spending. The country is divided. The KMT is mostly for reunification. Uh, the DPP party is mostly for independence, and then you have the TPP party, which is somewhere in the middle. And so there's a lot of kind of political chaos and infighting going on between the different parties and the future direction of Taiwan. And in the meantime, the U.S. keeps predicting that China is going to, quote, invade, unquote. And most Chinese I talk to don't think China is going to invade, quote unquote. Uh, they think that, look, there's been 50 years of stability. It's unlikely that China is going to make any drastic moves. China is still saying that it very strongly prefers eventual peace unification without putting any deadline. What's your take on the situation between the mainland and Taiwan and the U.S. part in stirring up trouble there?
I think I agree with you in terms of your assessment of what's going on. First of all, I would say the majority of the people in Taiwan do not want independence. We can see that from the presidential election result. The current president, Lai Ching-te, he won less than 50%. So the people who went for him, maybe most of them, maybe some of them will support independence, but that's less than 50%. You will see certain area of the people, especially those islands and other areas, because I look at the election result, I can show you the chart. I don't think they want independence. Because if they have independence, they're not going to have any position if that happens, but it's not going to happen. In terms of the China's military exercise around Taiwan, that's really started by Americans again. When Nancy Pelosi and Mike Pompeo and all these people visiting, well, so China just want to show a force, saying that, hey, but I think that with those exercise, they still have a lot of restraint and they do not want, but they just want to claim this is our territory. I would say that in Taiwan, they, eventually, it's up to those people, but I think eventually they will want to reunite it with China, especially when they see China is doing well, especially when they go to China, all the kids, when the college kids and so forth. The former president, Ma Ying-jeou, he brings groups of young people to have dialogues with the college students in China. And they have great dialogues. They talk to each other. They compare their lifestyles. It's a different life, but I think that I don't think the people in Taiwan wants to fight the war. And I would say even the DPP, if there's a war, they would tell their kids not to join the military because it is not going to be. It's not. It just really going to be waste of. I do not see that that's going to happening at all. So. Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Do you have any other comments you'd like to add before we close?
No, but I really enjoy talking with you. I say that sometimes we can even have a group conversation or a couple of us and just to having a talking things as things come up. I think that certainly the trade war, Mr. Trump have started, and then everybody was surprised at the result in terms of the negotiation. Well, from get-go, China does not want to have a trade war with the United States. But whenever you raise the tariff, they have to do that for their people too. Otherwise, their people will be mad, say, hey, they raised our tariff. But the tariff is not a good idea. So at a certain point, China basically said to the United States, we raise you up to 125 now. Anything above that is just ridiculous. It's a joke. So we're not raising anymore. And then President Trump raised to 245. But now everything is go back to US is imposing 30%, China is imposing 10% to the United States. In it, what's the 20%? So I do want to talk about this point.
Okay, go
The
ahead.
20% is about fentanyl. And this fentanyl is totally misinformation in the United States. The fentanyl they accuse China of is something called precursor. So it's probably a chemical compound that is part of it to making fentanyl. And it's not China is selling to the United States. China sold it to Mexico. This is a chemical that you can use it for many, many different things. It's like you buy Sudafed and you can make a crack or cocaine or something with that. But and then they pin this on China. So China is like, we want to work with you. What do you want us to do? And I was very sick over a year and a half ago. And the hospital have to administer morphine and fentanyl in me. So fentanyl is a useful drug. But what we have is abuse. We have abuse of doctors just giving out prescriptions to people. The United States does not just have a fentanyl problem. We have a cocaine problem. We have a marijuana problem. We have a crack problem. We have so many drug problems. We need to work on that. That really has nothing to do with China. I always say that if Japan sells steel to the United States, and let me go again. So if Japan sells steel to the United States, and a gun company used that steel to make a gun, and that gun shot someone, whether it's within the family or somebody go crazy or somebody defend themselves, but should the country of Japan be responsible for that gun? So this is how far-fetched this whole fentanyl idea is about. So when you hear about that, you always hear this key word, precursor. Basically, it's some compound that's part of it. So, but we have a group of people who really want to be hawkish to China. But I don't think it might earn them money. They get paid for what they're doing because they have a job, but they're really hurting the country. I do not think that just working against each other is good for China or for United States.
Okay, that sounds like a good place to leave it. I'm sure we'll have you back some other times.
Yeah.
If you have something that comes up that you would like to talk about, please feel free to contact me anytime. And if I have something that I would like to ask you to talk about, I'll contact you.
Yeah, and I would love to know more. It doesn't have to be interview, but to know about this peace with China. I think this is a very good slogan, and because even Jody Evans and them, they have this China is not our enemy, but yours is even better, And my organization also, we want to propose, we will promote peace and prosperity with partnership, and that's basically those are the things that we're talking about.
Okay, yes, and actually, I have this that you gave me
Yes.
last time when you visited.
Right.
I think is from your organization. I think
Yes.
maybe next time I'd like to have you talk about it.
Okay, sure. And yeah, that's fine. I'll be happy to talk about these things. But I think that we're doing the right thing as citizens. That's the only thing we can do is to have discussions in a very constructive way to hope our country will go into a better direction. I mean, the tariff, obviously it didn't work. The market tells Mr. Trump that.
Right.
That's why they reverse that. Because you see, when they have a negotiation that works, the market just bounce right back. So what is telling them? The market is telling them working against China is not a good thing. And so yeah, I have so much to talk to you about. I would love to know more about your Peaceful China project, to see if we can do something here as some of a branch of following your ideas, and we can get some people in the East Coast as well to
Okay.
work on.
Okay, great. Let me stop the recording here. Hang on for just a second. And thank you for being here.